Going to be doing some diagnosing on this guy. Got sent away, got taken apart, boxed, shipped somewhere, got back to the owner. Somebody else put it together. Either missing parts, things aren't put together correctly, super unadjusted. Usually when you do something like that, you're getting it boxed, you're taking it somewhere else, someone else is putting it back together for you, you're paying that fee. Whoever's building it, putting it back together, they should basically treat it like a tune-up. Once they assemble everything, make sure your brakes are adjusted, your shifting is adjusted, and nothing isn't what it's supposed to be. You know, on this one I think the dropper's cable is disconnected, front brake is rubbing big time. Whole caliper came off for whatever reason. Maybe they're trying to protect it. Put it back on, probably missing some spacers, so now the caliper itself is actually hitting the rotor, the top of the rotor. Got a missing bolt. This is a Levo, so we got a mid-drive motor. Missing bolt for the motor mount. It could have been like that. Maybe the rider didn't realize it vibrated loose, but it is gone. Those bolts just don't come loose and fall out. It probably was taken out at some point. Who knows if maybe this was a previous rental. I don't know the history whatsoever, but yeah, that bolt comes out once. We need to make sure we got some thread locker back on there. Keep those things from happening. Get it torqued right back to where it needs to be. Plus getting your thread locker back on there. Keeping that bolt from vibrating loose if we don't get it torqued correctly. A lot of these bolts are soft aluminum, so they're getting eaten away with your tool every time we open and close them. Good example is like if you have a through axle, you got to use like a 6mm hex wrench or 5. If we got to take it on and off constantly, that's soft metal. They're trying to go lightweight, so it gets eaten up. The opening gets a little bigger and bigger. Pretty soon now the tool is stripping and now we're stuck and we got another problem. So good idea if you can catch that on those things, get it replaced before it gets worse. So first thing noticeable, just rolling the bike, you know, into the shop. Wheel does not want to move. I'm standing in this position here, so I got a good eye line following the top of the rotor, going inside, and I can see it's making good contact with that caliper, or bad contact I should say. So spinning the wheel. Oof, that's tight. So following the top of this rotor, coming down, so right in there, we're getting a direct contact top of the caliper to the top of this rotor right here. We should have a 2-3 millimeter gap in there. So that's telling me the caliper is sitting too close on the fork too much, which is coming too close to the rotor. So like I said, this caliper probably came off maybe for shipping purposes. Bolt here, there's a bolt down here that is actually missing. There's no bolt down here. So man, huge fail. Anyways, this caliper is touching a adapter, probably a 20mm adapter, and that's to, this fork was probably set up for a 160. It looks like they maybe went to a 180 diameter rotor, which means we have a 20mm spacer, but this caliper is making direct contact, so we're probably missing, it could be a 5mm, 3mm spacer in between. This should back the caliper back and away, get it off of the top of that rotor. So here we got a missing rotor here. So this whole caliper, we need to back it out. We're going to put a washer in there. We're going to back it out a few millimeters this way, and we'll get off the top of that rotor there. So a good idea to save whatever spacers you get. Like say you do a V-brake. V-brakes come with a conical spacers. So conical, concave, and they kind of match each other. So you find them a lot on V-brakes. It gives you that articulation, something like that. So these are used quite often for disc brakes. So this one here is, I believe they're calling it concave, so it's sitting like this. And then this guy over here is opposite, sitting that, so it's going to fit nicely inside here. It's going to match its shape. Boom. So these guys, so this top one can kind of articulate and kind of roam around. So these could be used as spacers, or you can just get a stack of regular flat washers and get your thickness as well. So we'll try and figure that out. But we're going to need some of these. We're going to need a caliper bolt. So this is all my caliper bolts, some from Shimano, some from Avid, some from Tram. So lengthwise, that's the most important thing. So they do come in different lengths. Some of these have built-in washers right there. We got some old thread locker there. We can always make sure there's a clean, give them a wipe down, and then maybe add some more thread locker and just use a pinch, just, like this is a stock one right here. It just has a splash of blue right there. For turn it around, there's nothing there, so it doesn't need a whole lot. If you put too much of a good thing could be bad, and this thing could be stuck when you go to try and use your tool, and then we'll end up stripping stuff. Blue stuff is meant to come off with a hand tool. So this is company's Loctite. This is 248. It's blue. It's a chapstick style. You can get it in a drip form too. But I'm just going to give it a little dab there, and that's all I'm putting on. So when I go to thread this in, the little smear is going to spread around, and it's going to do its job. That's all we need. But I'm going with this size here, and then we'll go match it up over there. All right, we can see we got a bolt up here, and we're missing one down here. Everything else looks pretty good. Size rotor to our spacer or adapter here, which is allowing the rotor to jump back a bit, but we still a little close. We need to get back at least anywhere from 2, 3, 4, 5 millimeters. So I'm going to go with this bolt here, and we can size this bolt up right here. So it has to go through caliper, through my spacer or adapter, and then into the fork. So let's see. Actually, that right there, I'm probably getting about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 threads, maybe 5, 6. So this is decent. Possibly we can go longer. We just don't want to go so long that we bottom out into the fork. And if you don't know when to stop, if you feel pressure, you could destroy the inside of these threads here. So always pay attention to the length of your bolts. That can change. So let's give this a measurement. I'm going to use my multi-purpose pick here all the way in, put my thumb right at the base, and that's our length right there. That's where we're bottoming out. So that's pretty long compared to this guy here. So that's actually, let's see here. Actually, we got to start at that washer. So I could go, you know, maybe another 2, 3 millimeters longer, but I think this is a good bite here. That's the most important thing. So we're going to loosen up this guy. Typically a 5 millimeter hex, and this tool, that's getting in the way right there. Wheel doesn't want to spin. So, wow, hard to turn. Maybe we just have a lot of thread locker. Hopefully we didn't drive this thing in. It's not too long and they bottomed out on the top. Could actually run into another problem where the threads are messed up, but let's hope not. So far it looks pretty good. Not seeing extra shavings of metal, but this does need to come off completely. Definitely a long bolt right there. So it could be dangerously close. If you look at our nub here, this is a short thread housing. This one's a little bit longer. So I actually have no problem with swapping bolts there. So basically we want to keep our, man, this is just, everything is just horrible on this thing. This is our adapter here. Actually the arrow is pointing down, so this isn't even on correctly, but it's still getting clearance. Its main thing is not bumping into the shape of your caliper. This thing is backwards, so we're going to flop that arrow pointing upward, and it doesn't tell me what brand it is. Usually Shimano wants to stick with Shimano, but if something else fits, that'll work too. It's just it's a 50-50 chance, so it's going to do something like that. But we want to come off, so right in between these two we're going to put our spacer. And this combination here might be too much. This is the thinnest I can go on these guys. I'm just going to give it a look, see. And you notice they actually have half of one of those spacers here, so that actually cuts the length of this down. So if we need to, we can always, that's why we're going to swap that out. So I'm going to put the shorter one up at the top, put my spacers on, and then I'm going to go with our adapter, make sure we're in the up position. That just fits the shape of our caliper there. And looking at that, so now the bolt just shrunk. So let's get the right one. All right, so I'm going to go back to this guy. No spacer there. Go through there. Let's put some space between the caliper and our adapter. Boom. And then we got plenty of thread here. Let's slide that back on. So basically now we need to see what our gap looks like. So here's what we're looking at now. Now we have the opening of the caliper. Caliper's not tight right now, but this is the spacing we're looking at, and that's the top of our rotor. So before top of the rotor was hitting here, there was no space. So I can kind of press this down a bit. Still got to put some spacers on the bottom. So by me bringing that close, so just doing this, of course we're going to have some spacers down here, but just doing that, it's not changing what's happening up here. I'm pressing tight at the top. That's too big of a gap. What that's going to mean is the width of our brake pad needs to hit the width of our rotor. So it could mean that the rotor is actually missing the top portion of, or the pads are going to miss the top portion of the pad. Alright, so this is what we also have to look out for. If we put too many spacers between that adapter and the caliper, imagine this being in the caliper. Caliper comes in, it's backed off so much that we're not getting full pad contact onto the rotor. We actually want this over here, so if I flip this around, you can see that pad needs to hit that whole surface right there. So we don't want this pad sitting too high or actually sitting too low. We need it to be perfectly center in that braking surface area. All right, so these silver spacers right here, we got 2 of them. Too many, too high. So even though you have like the right parts, it looks like it's all factory, supposed to be, you know, factory fitted. There might still be some fitting, some shenanigans that need to be done to really fine-tune stuff, you know. So I'm going to actually take one out. Like again, you could probably go to flat spacers if you don't have any. I think you can use half of this one. I've even used, you know, if you have to in a pinch, you can use that ring from your Presta valve. That'll act as a spacer as well. We're not putting a lot of torque on it, so it's not like we're going to smash it. So bolt through here. Got the arrow correct. Again, it doesn't say Shimano, so we're just trying to make everything work and fit. And this is the rounded one, but it's going to be fine. As far as spacing, it's not going to hurt the integrity of the tightness or anything like that. So tight here. So again, we're looking to make sure this caliper is not too far this way or too far this way. That's going to affect where the pad is sitting in that braking surface. Definitely looking much better there, but I need to get a better look at it. I don't want to stick my head in the camera. And then we have to our length of our rotor, our bolt to think about too. So if this bolt is too long, we need to get the appropriate bolt, shorter bolt, or throw some spacers here at the end, which will take that space up so that screw doesn't go in and destroy threads inside your post of your fork. That would be a hard one to fix. Okay, so just kind of pressing that flush right there, taking a peek at the top. I mean, right there I can spin my wheel. I'm not rubbing anymore, but now I can walk my eyeballs in. I can see the rotor is maybe, you know, 3 mil below the brake pad. So this caliper can, let's see, let me hold that close. Ooh. We're close. Ooh, man, we almost be there. It could be within a mil spec. Of course, I'd have to get my eyeballs coming in from this angle, and the Shimano pads have the fins in there, so they block everything. But that's where ultimately, if I can come in from the top, get my eyeballs up here, we want to see the top of the rotor become flush with the top of the pads. That's what we're looking for. Okay, before we go there, we need to dial in the length of this one. So we got a short post on the top here, and this guy's pretty long. I definitely got a bite. I'm gonna turn nice and gently until, let's see, either gonna bottom out or I'm actually going to tighten my rotor. So I'm tightening up my caliper. So I feel I'm tightening my caliper first. I think I might throw a spacer here, just one, just to be on the safe side, because I drove it in pretty good. It did, you know, clamp down on the caliper, but if we got to put some torque on it, and again, this is probably approximately 4 or 5 Newton meters. So I'm going to throw at least one spacer there. See if we can do this without having a yard sale like that. So, all right, we'll pull this guy out. Put you there. One spacer here. Boom. One spacer here, and adapter, arrow up. So I got one spacer back here along with the washer, and then I got my gap over here. Spacers creating the gap. So I feel a little better about the bolt. And then, yeah, it almost seems excessive, but I don't feel like I'm bottoming out in my fork. That's the most important thing. All right, we're gonna keep that loose right there. Now we need something here for the bottom. So may or may not need the same spacing at the bottom, because now we're at somewhat of an angle. Let's see. Let's see here. So this is definitely a shorter bolt. Boom, that bolt's getting a good bite. I feel good about that. So bolt can go in straight away. Let's put one spacer between our adapter, get through our adapter, and then into our fork. And I'm using the tool to start it because my fingers can't get in there. This feels really good. I'm using very light pressure. Got it. Okay, definitely feel good about that. So that's firm there. I'm gonna back off. I want that little bit of jiggle. Actually, let's get it firm so we get an honest reading of how close the caliper is to the rotor. Okay. Like I said, we're spinning. If we're getting any rubbing, it's just more of a side-to-side thing because we haven't really centered the caliper yet. But much better. It's gonna be really hard to get on camera, but you can see that rotor is rotating, and that error, the gap, white light on top. Gap is a little too big, so our spacers are too thick. We need to break those spacers in half. And we're talking a couple millimeters, so we have good full pad contact. All right, try this point of view. So here we have pad material sticking up above our rotor. That's because we have too many spacers and the caliper is sitting away and back. So we remove those spacers, caliper comes in closer to the top edge of that pad material. Hits the top edge of our rotor. So like that, let's see, that actually is perfect. It may disappear on camera. This is up too high, and then I can go way too low. Thing just disappears and it starts hanging out the bottom. But that's what we're looking for. We're looking for top edge of this pad material to be on the top edge of our rotor, and vice versa. Same with the bottom. Like I said, this pad's a little big, but this is just for example. All right, so now that we got the caliper in the appropriate distance away from the rotor, pads are in making good contact, they're lined up. Now we're just gonna center the rotor, or center the caliper, which is a side to side. We do have that movement, so many millimeters of side to side. Very tight tolerance in there to begin with. We probably have 1 to 2 millimeters on each side that we're playing with, and some systems give you less than that, so we have to deal with that. But we're going to start with the easiest, fastest alignment. You're going to loosen up your two caliper bolts just enough to get a jiggle on the caliper, squeeze and hold this brake, and then you're going to tighten each bolt, but do it very loosely, kind of a light snug. Tighten top bolt a little bit, tighten bottom bolt a little bit, and go back and forth until you're snug and holds the caliper in place. If you turn one bolt too much, you go too tight, you could actually pivot the whole caliper and you're gonna lose your alignment. So go very light, because we're gonna do a check, give it a spin, get some eyeballs in there, go from there. Sometimes this works perfect, it works great. Other times it gets you close and we're still gotta rub, and then we gotta take care of it, that last bit by finger. So we'll see what we get. And then we're gonna come down here. If you're not already loose, we're going to crack them loose just enough to get that jiggle. In case we're going to squeeze that lever, working on the front brake, so we're hitting that left, or which is the appropriate lever. Squeeze in and hold. You can put some good tension on it. Hold and squeeze. And I'm going to apply gentle pressure. Just real lightly to the top bolt, get to the bottom, and just helps when you have the right tool. A little gentle pressure at the bottom, just a little bit more at the top. Can't get a lot of torque with this tool, which is fine. We're just trying to get this snug so it stays in place, because we're going to test it. I'm going to release the brake lever and give that wheel a spin. And we have a slight rub, but that could be multiple things. But we are spinning pretty good, very light rub. It's not enough to really slow the wheel down. I would be happy riding like this. You're not going to hurt anything. All right, so it's like we got a slight rub, but wheel's spinning pretty good. And we just want to get in front. I'm trying to get my eye line in here. Lock my eye line on the side of the rotor all the way into where the pad is. Right side, left side. And if you need help, you can get something bright on the back side here, or a light to catch your eye. I do see daylight on this side here, darkness on the inside. So if I have a spacing here, I need to, if that's a 1 mil space, I need to divide that. Have half a mil space here, half a mil space there. So I would be moving the caliper that direction, going from 1 mil to half mil, and then putting that other half mil on the other side. Of course, you could have a bent rotor. It's going to be evident when you spin it. It's going to go psh, psh, psh in one spot. This rotor, pretty darn straight. A lot of times, I may just go tighten the bolts up to that safety point of 4 to 5 Newton meters. Take it for a spin, hit the brakes, ride, spin, hit the brakes, and so on. That's going to help, maybe seat everything. That little rub may go away, so you don't have to waste your time, another 15-20 minutes messing with this thing, because it's so touchy. Very minimal clearance there.